I appreciate you taking out some time. This means a lot to me. The website is called MediaMikes, so you can check it out. I'll put this up on YouTube, and I'll get it out to our fans.
Awesome.
Let me jump right in. I don't want to waste some time. So first things first, I don't want to give anything away. You know, it's kind of obvious how the first Terrifier ended. So let's talk about how Art is back. And if we could talk about his supernatural abilities and kind of where they came from. I don't know what you could talk about.
Yeah, so that was a big thing going into part 2, and that's originally when we made part 1, I didn't have the moment where he's resurrected in the morgue. It just ended with him shooting himself, and then it went to the reveal that Victoria is the woman from the beginning. But I knew I was going to bring him back, and I didn't want the audience sort of just lost wondering if they're ever going to get another one or something. So I said, we have to show this character being resurrected, you know, coming back from the grave, basically. And but now that we did that, I said, I'm not just going to gloss over that element. I want that to be one of the biggest elements of this movie, that supernatural force or whatever that's driving this character, because inevitably all your slashers, they eventually come back from the dead at some point, but they never quite explain what's driving them. So I wanted that to be a big part of this film, and not even with just Art's character. There's this evil force that's driving him, but then you have the Sienna character, and she's sort of Art's counterpart, and there's some sort of force and some supernatural things working their way into her world, and just seeing how she reacts to that and the paths that both of these characters are on and how they eventually clash. That was my favorite aspect of this film. So it's a lot different than the first one.
That's amazing. And okay, so David, how do you feel how Art the Clown has kind of evolved in this second film for you?
Oh yeah, I had fun playing around with some of that notion, because I look at him being a lot more confident and arrogant about what he's doing now, because yeah, he now realized, oh wow, there's more to me than meets the eye. I'm a lot stronger now. I can come back from the dead. I'm basically invulnerable. So I'm going to have a lot more fun, and he doesn't have to be as careful. So he's going out in public. He's, just in broad daylight even, and just messing around with people. And I love that. It was so much more fun having it, because he's like, he feels a little bit more free this time around. And I think that's made him a little bit more vicious in a lot of ways too. He's like, oh wow, I'm just really unrestrained.
I agree. That was definitely intense, second film. So, being a huge horror fan myself, I even had to look away a few moments in the first film, I have to admit. So the second film is so much more. So did you ever fear of kind of going like too far, or were you guys looking to push it as far as you can go, or?
Yeah, I mean, my fear was that we wouldn't come close to the hacksaw scene, because whenever someone brings up Terrifier, they bring up Art and they bring up that scene. That's what they say, that scene. I know which one you're talking about. So we hear that all the time. It's like, well, how do we rival that? Where do you go? But also still walk some line, retain some semblance of, I don't know, just not going so over the top where you ostracize everybody. Whereas, you know what I mean? So I do try and still walk a line, even though this might be some of the most extreme things you've ever seen. Ow. It could be worse. These things could be worse. But
sorry, guys.
Making an appearance.
Oh, yeah. She always does.
Animals are welcome in the interview. Don't worry. That's totally cool.
All right, good.
So what would you say, like, how long, like, does it take for you guys to come up with these crazy kills? Like you said, when Art kills Dawn vertically, down, like, from the first film, like, how do you guys come up with these crazy scenes? Like, you have, like, like a death, kind of, like, wall where you list all the ways you can kill somebody, or how does it come up with all these great kills?
Well, the hacksaw scene, I mean, it just comes down to researching sometimes, like, what are some medieval torture methods? That's how I came up with the hacksaw scene in the first one, because apparently that was an actual method of killing people around, the Dark Ages or something, hanging them upside down and cutting them in half with a giant saw. I thought I'd seen a lot of slasher movies, and I never saw anything that awful in a movie, in a slasher especially. So I said that would be cool if we could pull that off, and I think that would really get people talking. So that's where that one came from. And I mean, one of the big kill that people talk about in part 2 was actually inspired by a picture of one of Jack the Ripper's victims that I saw in a book about Jack the Ripper. And I thought, wow, that's one of the most grotesque things I've ever seen. And let's reverse engineer that and have Art the Clown, attack somebody and show how they would end up in a state like that, a grotesque state. So that's where these things come from. Depends. You can find inspiration anywhere.
I know what scene you're talking about. That scene's crazy. So yeah, I agree. So David, I guess my wife wanted to know. She goes, "How do you get into the mind of Art the Clown before shooting?" I mean, what do you do?
Lots of therapy. No, no. I'm. I understand. Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, the cat. It's all the cat. This is what she's really here for, is inspiration. That's all. That's the only reason we keep her around. But really, it's just like once I understood the character, and I think I basically understood the character when I first read the first script and like talked to Damien about him and stuff like that. It's like once I sorry, tail in the mouth. Okay. Once I had that down, I was like, oh, I could just turn them on and turn them off. So it's that comes from my years of doing stage work, where I would have to sometimes play multiple characters in a show and be able to switch characters at the drop of a hat. So I think it's a good thing for everybody else involved, because I think the whole entire cast and crew would want to kill me if I acted like Art the whole entire time on set.
I get it, man. That's great. I love it. So, all right. So, Damien, what would you say was your biggest challenge going from this first film to the second film? What would you say gave you the biggest challenge for you?
Oh boy. It's funny because I say my safety net was Art in this movie. I felt the most confident writing him. I knew Dave was going to deliver with the character, and for the most part, I felt pretty secure with the kills as well. But I knew we had to do at least one kill that was going to come close to the hacksaw scene. But aside from that, everything else was really challenging and very risky in regards to the characters in this one, because you have more of a family drama injected into this movie that was totally missing from the first one. And following your female protagonist this time, and it's more her movie than it is Art's in some ways. So hoping that the audience is invested with her and they're willing to go on this journey and care for her by the time you reach the climax of this film, that was challenging. And just knowing that we were going to bring this really heavy-handed mystical fantasy and / supernatural element that was also absent from the first movie, because we could have easily phoned in a sequel and said, look, instead of putting Art the Clown in a warehouse this time, we're going to put him in a supermarket and just have him kill another group of people. People just want to see Art kill people, and they should be satisfied. But that's not the way I approach these things. I want to grow as a filmmaker. I want to bring the audience something different, radically different if possible, while retaining things that they did love from the original. So we did take really big risks with this movie, but I mean, we swung for the fences. But there should be enough things to satiate, especially a gorehound's appetite in this movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, the film itself, it's quite long. It's like what, like almost 220.
Yeah, 218.
I mean, you guys packed it nice and full. I mean, I love it. I mean, there's so much in there. It's like, the original film was just shy of 90 minutes, right? And yeah, like watching the second one, it's almost like you're getting almost two film, like double. So,
well, I say, it took us. What's been the gap? It's been like a 6-year gap in between movies. It took us 3 years to make this one. Might as well take as much as you can get, because I don't know when part 3 is coming around. But again, having said that, I mean, it wasn't just, okay, now there was never a conversation of length when we were making this movie. We never said we're going to make, this epic, Godfather 2 of horror. I mean, we knew, we would joke around saying we want this to be our Evil Dead 2, our Dawn of the Dead. We knew we wanted it to be, a step up. But it wasn't until we got into the editing room where I said, "Oh my God, guys, this movie is like 2 hours and 30 something minutes," and I was like, "We got to start cutting this down." But this was the organic movie that I wrote, and it's not like most horror movies, slashers especially, they specifically write filler. They don't really have a story. They're just trying to fill time in between the moment where you have your kills. But this movie, I was genuinely telling a story with characters that I really cared about. And every scene is sort of pushing the narrative or raising the stakes, or you're learning something new, unraveling a mystery. So this was just organically the story that I wanted to tell. It wasn't about padding it out or anything like that.
It's cool, man. I dig it. And I am, I have to brag for a minute. I am a proud owner of Terrifier on VHS.
Wow.
Yes.
I can't with my blur thing. It's friggin' blocking it.
Yeah.
But those guys at Whitwer Entertainment, I got to give them a shout out. Broke horror fan. Those guys are great. Do you think you guys will get any treatment for the sequel? Any talk? Any
About a VHS?
About a VHS release, possibly?
Oh, I would love to, man, because VHS is my childhood. All of my, everything I ever loved about horror movies, it was introduced to me on VHS. So I would love it. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure it's inevitable. The first one was a nice little success gimmick on VHS, so I'm sure we'll do it again.
Beautiful thing. That's cool. All right, so fun question. What would you say is one of your all-time favorite films? It doesn't have to be a horror.
Oh, that's easy
I like
for
kind
me.
of getting easy. All right, go, David. It's you.
Yeah. Mine's Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That is my favorite film of all time. I think it's a perfect film. It's got everything I love in a film in it. So that's it. It's got, romance. It's got comedy. It's got cartoons. It's got music numbers. It's got mystery. It's got horror elements.
Sure.
It's got film noir elements. It's just a perfect film.
I agree. Fantastic.
Great choice, man. Mine would be Jaws. That's my favorite movie of all time.
Hands down. If you saw my office right now, I have about half my office is filled with Jaws memorabilia.
There you go. You can't get a more perfect, satisfying movie. To me, that mixes, commercial and artistry. I mean, it's all there. It's just perfect. We can go on and on. Characters, screenwriting, score, directing, you name it. Yeah.
So what would you say, let's see, I think I have time for one more. Let's see, what would you say, what do you think you guys have in store for both of you next? And what are some of your dream projects that you would love to see get made?
Well, I would say, listen, we've said already that we plan on making another Terrifier, and I pretty much already have a blueprint for what that movie would be. But I don't know. I think we'd have to see what the audience reaction is to Terrifier 2. That could determine where we go, which direction. But a dream project of mine I've spoken about a lot would be a George Romero-esque zombie movie somewhere in between like Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, starring Sylvester Stallone. Either that, or I hope so. Yep, or I hope somebody allows me to, be the director on the Friday the 13th reboot. I would love to do that.
Oh my God, I could see that working, brother. That's really great. Yeah. And how about you, David? You got anything else going on that we can throw out there?
Yeah. First of all, I'm working on another horror film with a lot of the Terrifier 2 team. Mike Levy's directing it. It's called Stream, and we have a lot of horror alumni in this movie. It's like basically a who's cast of horror actors, like from Dee Wallace, Jeffrey Combs, Tony Todd, Danielle Harris, Daniel Roebuck, Felissa Rose, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are even people we can't even announce yet, and they're like big, huge names, which it's blown my mind. So that's hopefully going to be coming out next year. But other than that, they're about to announce it this week. There's another movie that should be coming out this holiday season. That's a horror film based on a very popular Christmas story where I play a certain mean one, if you know what I mean.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, so we'll be announcing that, I think, this week. And they just started an Indiegogo campaign for another movie I'm working on next year called The Dead Place. So I've put links up to that on my Facebook page and Instagram page, if anybody wants to contribute to that campaign. But other than that stuff I want to work on, of course, Terrifier 3. I mean, duh. I can't wait to, keep going on along with this adventure with Art. I think there's so much more to tell about him. But in addition to that, oh my God, I want to put this out into the universe now because I heard recently that the Duffer Brothers have want to make a live action series of Death Note, and I would love to play Ryuk in that. So if the Duffer Brothers are listening, you need your Ryuk. Hello, put me in, coach. I love apples. Because I love that series. Love that series so much. And I was like, even when I watched it, I was like, oh my God, I would love to play Ryuk back in the day when I was watching that. And I was like, oh my God, what a great character.
Put it on in the universe.
Yeah, totally putting that out there. Of course, want to play the Joker one day as well. So I'm putting that in the universe as well. So, I want to do him right. He's my favorite villain of all time. So yeah. And who knows? I'm happy to do whatever. I want to do some more comedy again too, because that's where my background is. So I would be really happy to do some comedy again.
That's amazing. All right, cool. Listen, guys, I think we're out of time, so I really appreciate you taking out some time for this. And hopefully, I wish you the best with the movie, and I'll be spreading the word as much as I possibly can to push this for you guys. So I guess best of luck, and thanks again. So.